At Thanksgiving, my sister stood up, tapped her wine glass like she was about to give an acceptance speech, and said it loud and proud like it was some big win. Mom and Dad are giving me the house. Emily's getting nothing. The whole room lit up. People clapped, cheered, even whistled. Someone yelled, "Finally!" I didn't join in. Didn't flinch. I just smiled, that kind of calm, quiet smile you give when a storm's rolling in, but deep down you already know the roof doesn't belong to you anyway. I gently set my fork down and looked at my dad. "Dad," I said real low, "do you want to tell them or should I?" His face went pale. Jenna froze mid-smirk. In that instant the mood shifted. Everyone could feel it. Something was coming. Before I tell you what happened next in that silence, I want to ask, where are you listening from tonight? It helps, knowing someone out there gets what it's like to grow up in a family like mine. My name's Emily Nolan. And if you'd known us before that Thanksgiving, you might have thought we were the kind of close-knit Midwestern family you see on holiday cards. Matching sweaters. Big smiles in front of a Christmas tree. Like we never argued, never raised our voices. But families like mine don't fall apart in loud, dramatic moments. They crack in quiet ones, in the small, invisible choices. In who gets heard and who gets ignored. For as long as I can remember, I've lived in that in-between space where no one sees you, until they need something. My little sister Jenna? She never lived there. She was the golden child. Loud, dazzling, magnetic. The kind of girl relatives fawned over at every get-together. "She's got such sparkle," they'd say. "She's just a natural." I didn't resent her. I just figured out early that if I was going to make anything of myself, I'd have to do it on my own. Because nobody was going to hand it to me, not like they did for her. Growing up, I watched my parents pour every ounce of attention into Jenna, like she was some delicate flower they had to keep alive. Dance classes, camps, private lessons. All the stuff I was told we couldn't afford when I asked. Later, when I moved to Chicago for work, they made it sound like I'd betrayed them. Selfish, they said. Like building a life of my own meant I'd walked away from them. Meanwhile, Jenna stayed local. Visited every weekend. Slipped right into the mold they'd shaped for her without missing a beat. Still, I kept coming home for the holidays. Mostly for my grandma, Evelyn Nolan. Sharp as a tack. Silver hair. And the only one in that house who ever looked at me with pride. When she hugged me at the door, it didn't feel like she had to. It felt like she meant it. She'd tap my cheek, lean in and whisper, "You're stronger than they think." Then she'd shuffle back to her chair like she hadn't just given me enough strength to survive another year. This Thanksgiving felt off from the start. The air in the house had weight to it, thick and charged, like everyone was in on something I wasn't. Mom kept flitting around the kitchen with that tight-lipped smile she gets when she's hiding something. Dad barely looked at me. Jenna was smoothing her dress again and again, even though it was spotless. And when I stepped into the dining room, I noticed something else. The chair next to mine gone. Not tucked in. Not moved. Just missing. I should have caught on right then. But in my family, warnings don't come with flashing lights. They come in silence until it all blows up. I sat down anyway. Laid my napkin across my lap. Pretended not to notice the way conversations dipped into awkward silence whenever I entered the room. It was like someone hit pause. Then fake laughs would fill the air as soon as I passed. Jenna, meanwhile, floated around like it was her big show. Straightening place settings. Fixing the centerpiece. Whispering little things to Mom that made them both giggle. Every once in a while she'd shoot me this polite, clipped smile. Tight. Hollow. The kind of look you give a coworker you barely tolerate. But it wasn't always like this. Once upon a time we were just two sisters. Sharing a bedroom. Slipping notes under the door after lights out. She used to braid my hair. Steal my sweaters. Beg me to drive her around once I had my license. Somewhere between high school and adulthood everything shifted. Jenna slid right into the role our parents had always been shaping for her. Perfect daughter, golden girl. While I slowly faded out of the picture. The whole house situation didn't start on Thanksgiving. It actually began about 6 months earlier, on a heavy, humid Saturday in June. Mom called out of the blue, asking me to come home for something important. No details. No heads up. When I got there, they didn't waste time with small talk. Just sat me down at the dining table, the same table where everything would eventually unravel. Dad had a folder laid out like some kind of pitch. Mom was grinning too hard, like the smile physically hurt to hold. Sweetheart, Dad started. We're refinancing the house. Just need your signature. Better rates, that's all. Nothing for you to worry about. But something in me tightened. My family never reached out unless they needed more than they were willing to admit. I flipped through the stack of documents, my pulse picking up. There were way too many pages. Numbers blacked out. Fast-talking explanations that didn't quite track. Can I take these with me? I asked, trying to keep my tone calm. I'd like my lawyer to look them over. Silence. Mom's smile wobbled. Dad shut the folder a little too fast, like he was already regretting showing it to me. It's just a formality, he insisted. Why complicate things? But I took the folder anyway. Back in Chicago, I handed the papers to my lawyer. She flipped through them page after page, her eyebrows climbing higher and higher. She didn't smile. She didn't ask questions. She just called me the next morning. This isn't a refinance, she said. It's a liability transfer. If you sign this, you're taking on their debt. Debt? I just stared at the phone, cold sinking into my chest. She laid it out for me, slow and clear. A second mortgage. Months of missed payments. Foreclosure warnings. All of it had been going on without me knowing a thing. And in that moment, something inside me just locked into place. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Something colder. Steadier. 2 months later, Dad called again. This time he asked for money. Not help. Not a loan. Just straight up money. He said it was for Mom's medical bills. But when I offered to pay the hospital directly, he cracked. The story shifted. The cracks in the dam started to show. Late bills. Looming deadlines. Panic barely held together with tape. Now, sitting at that Thanksgiving table, watching Jenna bask in everyone's praise, those 2 months weighed on me like bricks. They weren't gifting her the house. They were saddling her with the debt. And they expected me to sit there and smile while it happened. By November, the secret between me and my parents buzzed like static. We didn't talk about the papers I refused to sign. We didn't mention the call where Dad confessed what was really going on. Instead, our conversation shrank into safe little updates. Weather, work, small talk that floated on top of a massive crater we all pretended wasn't there. What they didn't know was that I hadn't just walked away. I pulled the property records myself. I saw the second mortgage. I saw the interest growing like rot. I saw the foreclosure countdown already in motion. They weren't just drowning. They were reaching for someone to pull under with them. And for a while, I thought that person was supposed to be me. I had the good job. No kids. To them, I was the safety net they felt entitled to. Learning how to say no to them was like forcing myself to speak a new language, one that tasted bitter with guilt. Then Jenna started dropping clues on social media. Captions about new beginnings. Selfies on the porch with our parents. Snarky jokes about becoming a homeowner. Each post was like another puzzle piece locking into place. A week before Thanksgiving, Mom called. She sounded thrilled. Said Jenna was so excited to start hosting more holidays once things were settled with the house. She said it like it was a sweet little hand-me-down, not a bomb they were wrapping up like a gift. That night, I stopped waiting for them to come clean. I went to my desk, pulled out a folder, and started building my own. I made copies, overdue notices, payment demands, summary sheets that laid out exactly how deep in the hole they were. I wasn't planning some big scene. I wasn't there to shame them. I just wanted to make sure no one at that table could pretend they didn't know what they were signing up for. On Thanksgiving morning, I drove back home with that folder tucked in my bag and a knot twisting in my stomach. A part of me still held out hope. Maybe they'd pull me aside, admit it had gone too far, walk it back. But that didn't happen. Instead, Mom met me at the door with a stiff hug that smelled like too much perfume and tension. "You look beautiful," she said. "Jenna's going to be so happy you're here." Not we dash. Not I'm glad. Jenna dash. That told me everything I needed to know. Inside, the dining room was set like a magazine photo. Extra leaves in the table. Sparkling glassware. Every chair filled except mine. My grandmother caught my eye from across the room. She gave me a small knowing nod, like she understood more than she let on. I slid into my seat. My fingers brushed the edge of my bag. Canvas against paper. Truth resting quietly under the tablecloth. If they were going to turn this dinner into a show, I wasn't going to be the silent background character anymore. When Jenna stood up and tapped her glass, I already knew the spotlight was about to hit. I was about to watch a scene they'd rehearsed without me. She stood there glowing, hair curled to perfection. The necklace Grandma gave her catching the light like it had been staged for this exact moment. Mom and Dad are signing the house to me, she beamed, her voice ringing out like a toast. Emily gets nothing. The room erupted. Laughter, clapping, someone actually whistled. Someone else patted Dad on the back like he just made the deal of the year. Mom wiped the corner of her eye like she was watching a proposal. I didn't lift my glass. Didn't move a muscle. I just looked at Jenna and gave her a smile tight, measured, carrying the weight of everything I hadn't said yet. Then I set my fork down gently. Dad, I said. Should I tell them or will you? It was like I cut a live wire. The room snapped into silence. So quiet I could hear the radiator ticking. Dad's hand twitched. His fork hit the plate with a sharp clatter. Jenna's face tightened. Tell us what? She asked, trying to sound unfazed. All around us, relatives leaned in. They could smell it, drama hanging in the air. Grandma exhaled sharply, like she'd been holding her breath for years. I reached down, unzipped my bag, and laid the folder flat on the table. I didn't open it. Not yet. I just let it sit there like a warning light. Before everyone gets too excited about Jenna getting the house, I said calmly, you might want to know the condition it's actually in. Dad jumped in fast. Emily, this isn't the time. Why not? I cut him off. You weren't too embarrassed to sign the house over without telling her about the debt. The room shifted. Heads turned. Forks stopped midair. Jenna's shoulders tensed like someone had pulled a string tight inside her. What debt? She snapped. I opened the folder. Stack after stack, bills, notices, red text screaming from the pages. I slid one summary page forward so everyone could see the bolded line. They're behind, I said. On 2 mortgages. The second one? They took that out without telling anyone. They're on the edge of foreclosure. Months away. Maybe weeks. Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Dad flushed crimson. Jenna looked like I'd smacked her across the face. That's not true, she said, her voice cracking. They would have told me. Did they? I asked, locking eyes with her. Did they tell you this house comes with over $100,000 in debt? That if you sign those papers, you're responsible for every missed payment, every late fee, every penalty. I saw it hit her. Something shifted in her face, like a crack forming in perfect glass. Dad jumped back in. You're making it sound worse than it is, Emily. We're handling it. Are you? I said, holding up another document. Because according to this, the bank doesn't think you're handling anything. Dad lunged forward like he could grab the paper straight out of my hand in front of everyone. I pulled it back before his fingers got close. Stop, Mom pleaded. Please don't do this today. Why not? I said evenly. You're the ones who chose today. Chairs scraped softly as people shifted. Some looked deeply uncomfortable. Others leaned in, suddenly invested. A few were clearly angry at being dragged into something they hadn't signed up for. My Aunt Diane broke the tension first. Daniel, she said, sharp and steady. Is this true? Dad didn't answer. His jaw locked so tight I thought it might crack. Mom pressed her napkin to her face and started to cry. Jenna looked from them to me, confused and shaking. But they said the house was mine. It was never a gift, I said quietly. It was an exit plan. They needed someone to take the debt. They tried me first. When that failed, they chose you. Jenna stood there in her sequin dress, frozen, trembling. Her fiancé, Tyler, leaned slightly away from her, like he wasn't sure he wanted to be anywhere near this. Is she lying? He asked, his voice tight. Your parents. Mom sobbed harder. Dad stared down at the table. That was answer enough. Tyler pushed his chair back and stood. You told me the house was paid off, he said. You said we were starting clean. Jenna reached for him, but he stepped back. You expect me, he went on, his voice shaking with anger and disbelief, to build a future on a sinking ship? Tyler, please. He shook his head. I'm not marrying into this. The room gasped as he walked past the turkey, past my parents, and out the front door without a single glance back. Jenna's knees buckled. She collapsed into her chair, hands shaking, mascara streaking down her face. For the first time in years, she didn't look like the favorite. She looked like the little girl who used to crawl into my bed after bad dreams. "This isn't my fault," she whispered. "I didn't know." "I know," I said softly. Dad slammed his palm on the table. "You ruined everything." I met his eyes. "No. You ruined everything the moment you tried to pass your debt onto your children, like it was an inheritance. You're tearing this family apart," Mom cried. "It was already broken," I said. "I'm just done pretending it wasn't." A low murmur spread around the table, disappointment, judgment, the kind that cuts deeper because it comes from people who just watched the truth unfold. My grandmother slowly stood, bracing herself on the table. Her voice was thin, but it carried more weight than anyone else's in the room. "I raised you better than this," she said to my father. "Your daughters are not lifeboats." Dad shrank in his chair. Mom cried harder. Jenna finally looked up at me, her eyes empty. "What do I do now?" The question hit harder than she realized. Not because I had the answer, but because for the first time she was asking the right person. Not the parents who sold her a fantasy, but the sister they'd pushed aside. Before I could speak, there was a loud knock at the front door. Every head turned. Another knock, harder this time. Dad frowned and went to the door. When he opened it, a woman stepped inside. Plain suit, badge clipped to her belt. Calm. Unreadable. "Mr. and Mrs. Nolan?" she asked. "I need to speak with you regarding your mortgage records." The room exploded again, this time with disbelief. Mom nearly collapsed. Dad went pale. Jenna grabbed the edge of the table like it was the only thing holding her up. I didn't move. I just sat there, breathing slowly, watching the truth finally arrive on its own. "Why is she here?" Dad whispered, his voice breaking. The investigator didn't flinch. "We received a report of possible financial misconduct. I have some questions." You could have heard a pin drop. No one was cheering now. "Emily," Mom sobbed. "Please tell her there's been a misunderstanding." I stayed silent. Because the truth wasn't finished yet. And when that investigator stepped fully into the house, everything my parents had been holding together finally collapsed. The investigator asked calm, steady questions about missed payments, overdue notices, the second mortgage. And with every question my parents dodged, the room felt like it shrank a little more. Relatives started drifting away from them, like they were backing away from something dangerous, something about to burn. Jenna sat frozen, hands trembling in her lap. She wasn't angry anymore. She looked hollow, like someone had drained every bit of color from her. My grandmother stood quietly behind her, resting a hand on her shoulder. Firm, silent, unmoving. When the investigator finally left, documents in hand, the house fell into a thick, heavy silence. Mom reached for me. Dad muttered that I'd embarrassed them, but neither an apology nor an accusation could reach me now. I grabbed my coat. Jenna looked up and whispered, "Don't go. I'll still be here." "I know," I said gently. "I just won't be here for their lies anymore." In the weeks that followed, everything changed. My parents were finally forced to face the wreckage they'd built. Layer after layer of secrets, excuses, and debt. The house went on the market. They moved into a small apartment across the city. It was quieter than they'd ever been. No more big speeches. No more favorite child spotlight. Jenna started going to therapy. She called me often. Sometimes to cry. Sometimes just to sit in silence on the phone. She told me she finally understood why I stopped letting our parents speak for me all those years ago. And me? I learned something I should have understood a long time ago. Telling the truth isn't betrayal. Hiding it is. And families built on denial? They always fall apart. Eventually. So if you've ever found yourself standing alone at a table full of people who claim they love you, but only on their terms, tell me where you're listening from. And after hearing everything I've told you, what would you have done?